All right, we are going to get started. This is everything you want to know about COVID-19 and the COVID-19 vaccine. My name is Dr. Valda Crowder, and as a lot of you know, but maybe the newcomers don't, I'm an emergency medicine physician. I've been practicing emergency medicine now for 30 years, and I've treated patients across 4 pandemics, 2 Category 5 hurricanes, and 1 mass shooting. So we're going to give you everything that you need to know about the vaccine and decisions that you need to make in your life on a day-to-day basis as we actually get into the end of this pandemic. We're not there yet, but we're coming close. So all of these presentations are dated. So this one is dated for March 18th. All of the source documentation and research is on AskDrV.us. So AskDrV.us is where all the source documents are. And then on Twitter, you can follow me on AskDR_V. So let's get started. The structure of the webinar is 20 to 25 minutes, followed by Q&A. I want to get through the slides as quickly as possible so that you guys can ask questions about what is going on for you in your life. Now, everyone in the presentation is in listen mode. You can ask questions 2 ways. You can actually put them in the chat icon, and you can actually put them in the Q&A. You can do that now. If you want to begin inserting questions now, you can actually insert questions now as the presentation is going on. So please don't feel like you need to wait. And there are people who've been on this webinar before who aren't going to wait. So if you want to get your question answered early, go ahead and throw it in the chat and throw it in the Q&A. All right. The intention of this webinar is to keep participants informed about COVID-19 science that will help you and your family stay healthy during this pandemic. The outcome is that you will leave the webinar motivated to create or improve an action plan for yourself and your family, or you'll be motivated to create an action plan or improve an action plan for a broader community. Let's say, for instance, a homeowners association or a union or a school or business. All right, where are we? Globally, we've had 122 million cases of COVID-19, and we have had just shy of 2.7 million people dead globally. In the United States, we've had 29 million cases. So that's about 1 in 10 people have been infected by COVID-19. And we've had 534,000 people dead. That is similar to the population in Atlanta or Baltimore, or the number of people that we actually lost during World War I and World War II combined. Now, I want to talk about this because I see this in the emergency department a lot, right? I don't think people realize how many kids have been orphaned by the pandemic, or we have sick or frail or elderly people that were living with their sisters or their sons who've now been orphaned in a similar fashion, right? And so when everything happens and everybody, begins to go back to life, maybe sometime back to our regular life, maybe sometime in the fall, I just want people to be mindful that there are people that have lost a significant amount of their social structure as a result of COVID-19, whether or not it's parents, grandma, aunts, or uncles, and just really be mindful that they actually may still be mourning. We have traumatized and tired nurses who are quitting during the pandemic and deciding to go into other professions, or in some cases, they may be deciding to no longer work in the ICU. This is really disheartening because we need nurses and physicians and techs and PAs and LPNs and nurse practitioners and respiratory techs and X-ray techs. We need the entire medical team to actually stay intact for now and for in the future so that they're there when we have medical needs. We've got some folks in Idaho talking about burn the mask and putting together a burn the mask thing. I think this is just a little bit too soon. We're not ready right now. We're in the red zone. We're not in the end zone. This is end zone activity. Similarly, Texas governor said, let's lift the mask mandate and allow businesses to open 100% capacity. Again, this is like celebrating when you're in the red zone and you're not in the end zone. We're not there yet. We're close, but we're not there yet. So what happened? So what has happened is 15 states have seen an uptick in their COVID-19 infections. Now, what I'm watching for is yesterday, because yesterday was St. Patty's Day. So what happened in St. Patty's Day in Texas and in Florida and these other states that are 100% open? We will see an uptick of infections, and we will discuss it here on AskDrV. I want to say thank you to Kroger, Starbucks, and Target. They are some of the retailers who said no matter what the state of Texas says, they are not ending their state mandate. So I want to thank you guys and appreciate you for helping us stay healthy. I also want to give a shout out to Gulf Oil. I saw this sign when I went to pump my gas. I took a picture of it. I'm sharing it with you. Please wear a glove or use a piece of paper to pump gas and for all touch points on the gas pump. Thank you so much for Gulf Oil for reminding us of how important everyday touch points that we may not think about are really, really critically important. Just a reminder that countries that have a higher rate of obesity, which means the United States, has been seeing a 10 times higher increase in COVID-19 deaths. So, again, all of these things, all of these wellness and health and wellness things factor into what we're actually seeing right now. All right, so let's go through some COVID-19 basics. Now I tell people RESPECT, COVID-19. Why? Because it's highly contagious. Minimum time of exposure to infect other people is 45 seconds. That's for the original COVID-19. For the variants, it's 15 to 20 seconds. Now, how many people actually get it out of 100 people that were exposed to it? 60 to 80%. For the variants, it's over 90%. And they have a higher viral load. Now, COVID-19 can actually be transmitted by droplet and airborne. This is how come originally we had the criteria that we needed to be less than 3 feet from each other, and then it expanded to 6 feet. So droplets are heavy. They're 5 microns or more, and they actually drop or fall 3 feet from the place of origin. Airborne is less than 5 microns, and they travel further. So I want to show you what that looks like, so we all understand. The red is the droplets. The gray is the airborne. So I gave an example here, which is Ebola. Ebola is a droplet disease. Now, COVID-19 and measles is an airborne disease. Tuberculosis is an airborne disease. COVID-19 operates as both. So if you can imagine this man here to the left, he's actually COVID-19 positive, and he talks, yells, sings, coughs, sneezes, or plays an instrument. These are all the molecules that are sent out, right? So these molecules are sent out, and they, the droplets fall within 3 feet, and then the airborne actually lingers in the air. Now, how far they linger in the air depends upon the temperature and the humidity. Less than 52 degrees temperature, they go further than 6 feet, which is why we have more of a problem in the wintertime. Now, if you can imagine, this person does this, and then he walks away and leaves. So what was in the pathway of that? Was it a park bench? Was it a door handle? Was it a gas pump? Right? When you think of all the things that we actually interface with, this is why COVID-19 is so important and so dangerous. So let's talk about testing. The gold standard for testing is the PCR test. The PCR test actually detects genetic material of the virus. It's a nasopharyngeal swab primarily that is actually quite painful. It's most accurate 8 days after exposure, and it's inaccurate if you test too soon or too late. The rapid test, which a lot of people get because they want the results right away, has a false negative rate of 30%. And I want to actually explain what that means. False negative rate of 30% means 30% of the time, the test tells you you do not have COVID-19 when you do. I'm going to say that one more time. 30% of the time, the test tells you you are negative and you do not have COVID-19 when you actually do have COVID-19. Now, if the test is positive, it's true. If it's negative, you need another one. For somebody who's actually getting rapid tests, I wouldn't actually really believe the results unless I had maybe 3 tests in a row. All right, let's talk about masks. Now, a lot of people have had the fabric masks that they made at home. Those are 25 to 30% effective. The surgical mask in the upper right-hand corner, they're 30 to 35% effective. You really want to have the KN95 mask. I show the N95 versus the KN95. They're very, very similar. The only difference is the KN95 mask is actually for regular people to use. And so non-medical use. So that KN95 mask is normally 80 to 90% effective. The number 95 is it's 95% effective when it's fit tested. Most of us have never gotten fit tested. Okay, so as an emergency medicine physician, I have been fit tested for a N95 mask. And when I wear my particular model and my particular brand and my particular size, then it's 95% effective. But that's fine. You don't need to be fit tested. Without fit testing, it's 80 to 90% effective, and it's way better than those other masks on top. Okay, so I tell people the number one thing, they say, should I double up on my mask? What should I do? No, just upgrade to a KN95. Now, if you want to wear your pretty mask with whatever that matches your outfit on top of it, the KN95, you can, but that's just aesthetics. Then the Spirion half respirator mask to the right there, that is the N100 mask, and that is what I used during the entire COVID-19 pandemic to keep me safe. And that is an N100 mask. So I just wanted to share with you everything around masking. The KN95 mask can be found at Home Depot, it can be found at Target, it can be found at Costco, and it can be found at Honeywell. So I want people to know it's widely available. I would recommend getting at least 7, so that way you have 1 for each day of the week. And then you reuse it the following week. So keep your Monday mask Monday, keep your Tuesday mask Tuesday, keep your Wednesday mask Wednesday, right? And do that sort of thing. All right, now a lot of people say masks are uncomfortable. I just want to give people a reality check. This is what it looks like when I intubate you because you have COVID. I use a stainless steel laryngoscope going down the back of your throat. I visualize your vocal cords and I pass a plastic tube through your vocal cords and actually put you on a ventilator. So masks are not as uncomfortable as this. All right, so let's talk about COVID symptoms. There are, I say 7, but we're going to talk about 6. But the number 1 cluster of COVID symptoms is no symptoms. So remember that about 40% of the spread of COVID-19 was asymptomatic, right? So cluster 1 is flu-like with no fever. Cluster 2 is flu-like with a fever. Cluster 3, which a lot of people forget about, is gastrointestinal. You may think you ate something wrong. So it's like a nausea, vomiting, diarrhea type of symptoms, okay? May or may not, these 3 clusters may or may not be preceded by loss of smell, loss of taste, of loss of appetite. That is not required. But if it's there, that's great. And then cluster 4, 5, and 6 are the ones where you're more likely to be hospitalized, more likely to go into the ICU, and more likely to die. These are folks that have fatigue, they have confusion, and they have a combination of abdominal and respiratory symptoms. COVID toes. A lot of people don't know about COVID toes, but this is really important. People think maybe my shoes were too tight or something like that. You see it more in kids, but I've seen it in adults as old as 55. It's part of the multi-system inflammatory disease process. This is a reddish, a purplish or bluish discoloration of your toes. This is absolutely COVID-19 until proven otherwise. If we get a picture of this or a family member describes this, we say, don't even send them in, your child has COVID. All right, so let's talk about outcomes from COVID. So one, you have people who catch COVID, whether or not they're symptomatic or asymptomatic, they completely recover and they never, ever, ever develop symptoms again. That is the best possible scenario. Then we have people who catch COVID. They can be asymptomatic or symptomatic. They recover, feel fine, and then their symptoms return. They're called long haulers. Now, long haulers will develop symptoms, all different types of symptoms. Some of them are going to be short of breath. Some of them may have a chronic cough. Some of them may have problems concentrating. Some of them may have balance problems. It's an entire constellation of symptoms associated with long haulers. Then we have people who catch COVID. They actually recover. They become negative. They get COVID negative tests. And then 5 months later, they catch it again. That's just a reinfection. And maybe they reinfect it with a different variant or a different strain. Then we have people who are COVID positive. They become seriously ill. They have a long-term condition. They're in the ICU. We interviewed one that actually coded twice in the ICU here on the AskDrV show, and they have what we call post-ICU syndrome. So let me talk about that for just a second. So after you get out of the ICU, 70% of the people recovering from the ICU have either a cognitive, mental, or physical impairment. So it could be that they have kidney failure or renal failure, which requires dialysis or transplant. They could have limb amputations. They also could have a stroke. 50% of the people who have a stroke that are young are not able to return to work, or they may have lung fibrosis or decreased lung capacity, and they have problems walking a block or house cleaning. We've had several patients already that we've had to do a double lung transplant on as a result of COVID-19. So researchers have found a higher level of coronavirus in the brain, more coronavirus in the brain than in the lungs, which is, I think, a possible explanation for the long haulers and why we are seeing some of the neurologic symptoms around difficulty concentrating, loss of balance, etc. Now, one good thing about the long haulers is it seems like they've been feeling better after they get vaccinated. So it could be that vaccination actually really, really makes a difference in this. And this is actually very promising. This is research that I'm going to be watching. And as the data actually becomes available, I'm going to present it here. Now, let's talk about if you just found out, you're joining us because you just found out you're COVID-19 positive. We want you to quarantine, preferably for 21 days. I know that the public health department will tell you 10 or 14 days. About 10% of the people are still positive after that period of time. So if you want to break your quarantine after 10 or 14 days, my request, Dr. V's request, would be that you get tested. Not a rapid test, but a PCR test. And make sure you're actually really negative, because a lot of people are not. So now, what are we going to do? One, you're going to purchase a pulse ox. The picture of it is over to the right. I get a lot of questions about this. Which number should I be looking at? Because there's a number on the top and a number on the bottom. You want to look at the number that says SpO2. That is your hemoglobin saturation or your oxygenation, right? If you're a healthy person, you want that to be 94, 95% or higher. Now, if you're a smoker or you have emphysema or you have asthma, all bets are off. You'd have to really know what your baseline is. The second number is your pulse rate. You know, if you're sick and you have a fever, your heart rate can be high. Your heart rate can be 100, 110, 115. You know, really, your heart rate is really not going to be a problem unless it's probably up over 120. I want everybody to be taking zinc and vitamin D3 right now. I've given you all the dietary allowances and the maximum per day. It is very, very important because people who are deficient in these two chemicals are having more of a problem with COVID-19 and are more likely to actually go to the ICU. You want to have a bathroom that's only used by you. You want to have a cell phone. Who are you calling? You're not calling another family member. If you call another family member, you're going to give them COVID-19. You want to call 911, okay? You want people to leave food at your door, and you want to open up the windows. You need ventilation. If you have HEPA filters in your HVAC system, that's even better. All right, so let's talk about how do we treat COVID-19. Obviously, if people have low oxygen, we give them oxygen. Vitamin D and zinc, you have to take that at home. We don't give that to you at the hospital. Famotidine is very, very important. I don't think I included a picture, but it's Pepcid AC. It's a fancy name. It's just Pepcid AC. Go to the drugstore. If you don't have this in your cabinet, you want to have this in your cabinet if you haven't been vaccinated. Pepcid AC. Not because you have a stomach problem. Pepcid AC actually decreases histamine release. So it lowers inflammation everywhere in your body. COVID-19 is an inflammatory disease. So I tell people, take Pepcid AC. I had somebody just this last week who called me. He says, you know, Val, I took Pepcid AC. And he says, I was thinking you were crazy. He said, it actually works. I know it works. That's what we do. We give it in the emergency department. Decadron. Decadron you can only get in the hospital. That is also something that decreases inflammation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about antibodies because antibodies are really important while people are waiting to get vaccinated. And ECMO. ECMO is extra corporal, which means outside the body, mechanical oxygenation. Okay. So this is when you actually fail a ventilator. So we put you on the ventilator and you actually fail a ventilator. So what does that actually look like? That basically is we cannulate the vessels going in and out of your heart, and we divert your blood to a bedside machine, and it oxygenates it and puts it back into your heart. So ECMO is actually being done at academic institutions on COVID-19 patients. It's primarily reserved for younger, when I say younger, probably less than 50, less than 55, just because a lot of patients that are older than that can actually withstand this degree of manipulation. All right, infusion center. So one of the things you want to have in your plan is you want to know where an infusion center is, because antibodies, monoclonal antibodies to COVID-19 decrease the likelihood of being admitted by 70%. So this just shows a typical screening tool, right? So what's most important is you've had to have, now for this screening tool, it was symptom onset less than 10 days. Now I'm going to tell you from my hospital that I work at is less than 9 days. So please do not sit at home with symptoms for 2 weeks and then come in, because we don't have as many things that we can do for you. So you want to come in within a week. If you're sick for 5 days, get in. If you're over 65 and you're COVID positive, we're going to automatically give you antibodies. If you're 12 to 64 years old, it depends upon whether or not you have a BMI over 35, do you have diabetes, do you have chronic heart disease, do you have a risk factor? Now, most people don't know what their BMI is. If you are a little pudgy, over 30 pounds or so, 20 or 30 pounds heavy, you probably have a BMI over 35 and you should come on in. All right. So once you have COVID-19, you have immunity for about 5 months. So that's per a UK study. So some places are recommending, if you've had COVID-19, you cannot get vaccinated when you've had COVID-19, when you're actively in the midst of COVID-19. And they recommend that you wait at least 2 weeks until the infection is over. And some places are suggesting that you wait 90 days because you have antibodies. Now, let's talk about these vaccines. First, I want to talk about how does the virus actually work. So the viral RNA is inside of the cell, And then it has a fatty layer around it, which has spike proteins on the surface. That spike protein connects to the receptor protein. When that spike protein connects to the receptor protein, it click, click, unlocks your cell. And then suddenly it gets into your cell. And this is how the whole process gets started. And this is why the spike protein is so important. So once it gets inside your cell, your RNA and your ribosomes start making copies. They make copies and copies and copies. They make copies of the viral RNA, and they also make copies of the actual fatty protein that's covering and the spike protein. They create a whole new cell, and it goes out and infects another cell. And it keeps on going over and over again. And this moves fast. So you have over a trillion, with a T, like Thomas. You have a trillion cells in your body. When people come into the emergency department with COVID-19, they say, my whole body feels on fire, right? They have a fever and their whole body feels on fire, because this process keeps going and going and going, and it moves very, very fast. So how do these new vaccines actually work? Moderna and Pfizer work similarly. They are RNA coded for your spike protein. When you get vaccinated, it tells your body to produce the spike protein. Your body recognizes the spike protein is foreign, develops antibodies to it, attacks it, and kills it. So then when your body sees the spike protein for real in the community, then it attacks it and kills it. So it doesn't necessarily stop you from getting infected with COVID-19. It stops the virus from going into your cells, which causes the harm from COVID-19. Similarly, the Johnson & Johnson, it uses a viral vector approach. So there's a common cold or adenovirus, which is altered to become harmless. It's connected with some genetic material from COVID-19. These two things are combined, right? And then it teaches your cells to actually attack the COVID-19 spike protein. And again, you develop antibodies to it, and it leads to the COVID-19 virus actually being harmless when you actually experience it in public. So these are the actual clinical trials that are going on right now. So I wanted to just put all of them out there. And I want to I'm going to talk about them real quickly. So there's Pfizer and Moderna, which are both 94, 95% effective. They're both 2 shots. One is 21 days, the other one's 28 days. What's important is Pfizer can be given to children 16 and older. Moderna can be given to children 18 and older, right? And outside that, there's some storage issues. Then there's Johnson & Johnson. That's the one and done. So if you're a one and done type of person, that's the 1-dose vaccine. Now, the efficacy of that is 72% in the US, 66% in South America, and 57% in South Africa. Now, a lot of people say, well, the other vaccines are more efficacious. Not really. Neither Pfizer nor Moderna were tested when there were variants. So they came out earlier, their testing was earlier, and we didn't have any mutations. So what we've seen from Pfizer and Moderna is they do seem to work on the UK mutations. The data has not come out on the other mutations. So even those people, we may be looking at some sort of a booster shot. The AskDrV vaccine is a vaccine that we've seen given out in the UK. That is the one that's been associated with the a lot of blood clots. I doubt that we're going to see AstraZeneca actually approved in the United States. The Janssen clinical trial, which is going on currently right now, is actually 2 doses of the Johnson & Johnson to see if a second dose will actually make a difference. The Novavax trial, which is going on at Howard University, I think that is the next drug that we will actually see that will be approved for emergency use authorization. Now, AstraZeneca, problematic in another way. It was found to have no efficacy against the South African virus strain. So this just came out today or yesterday. So I do not think we are going to see AstraZeneca in the United States. And I believe that the UK's use or the EU's use of AstraZeneca is why you're seeing another lockdown in Italy. Novavax has another issue. They've got manufacturing hurdles. So even if they get approved, they've got manufacturing hurdles, but that can be worked out through different partnership agreements, etc. Now, a lot of people ask me, what's in the COVID-19 vaccine? Now, I know, I tell people all the time, I says, now you may not be sure what's in your Popeye's chicken, but I'm gonna tell you what's in the COVID-19 vaccine. Here you go. This is a screenshot per the FDA. You can take a picture of it. And this is what's in the COVID-19 vaccine. A lot of people ask me if ethylene glycol or antifreeze is in the COVID-19 vaccine. The answer is no. What is in the COVID-19 vaccine is polyethylene glycol. It's commonly found in lotions, creams, and toothpaste, and it helps the vaccine evade the immune system and stay in circulation longer. A lot of people ask me about, can COVID-19 vaccine, can it, hurt your DNA? So remember, the virus is an RNA. So I just want to start off talking about the difference between RNA and DNA. RNA is single-stranded, DNA is double-stranded, and that is the genes of your body, right? So I want to go over some really specific difference. DNA is self-replicating. RNA is synthesized from DNA, but RNA cannot impact DNA. So think of it like this. RNA comes from DNA. So DNA is the parent.
Oh, unmute me. Says the host will back to unmute. Good thing I was looking at. I got to watch a few of these episodes and I really loved it. And I found it fascinating. How did this project okay. Hello. It was sort of hello. And I clicked on unmute. And he presented this footage to us that he had been inside the rise of the 8chan. Okay.
All right, Haywood, can you unmute?
Yes.
Right. All right. Where did I get stopped? I apologize.
What was it?
2 minutes ago.
Okay.
Even 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes ago on
Okay. All right. So I'm going to do my screen share. Hold on just a second. You stay on. I'm going to do my screen share. Thank you guys for staying on. And every once in a while, you guys know we have technical problems just like everybody else during this whole pandemic. Hold on just a second. Well, did you see this slide?
Wait, I don't see a slide. Yes, we were on that one.
Okay, all right,
That's
great. All right, so let's start right there. All right, great. Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, okay, thank you. All right, go ahead. All right, so I want to thank you guys for hanging in there with me. And so anyhow, so DNA is self-replicating. RNA is created from DNA. So think about RNA almost like the child and DNA is like the parent. So the parent DNA can impact RNA, but RNA can't necessarily impact DNA. Now, DNA is susceptible to ultraviolet light damage because it's a double helix, and RNA is not. So when you think about UV light, that's actually tanning. So tanning beds and prolonged sun tanning, you shouldn't do that because they can damage your DNA. COVID-19, yes, you should take the COVID-19 vaccine. It does not damage your DNA. All right, so now a lot of people say the vaccine was developed too quickly. You know, I can't trust something that was developed in 11 months, right? I remind people that SARS started in 2002. It impacted 33 countries and there were 810 people that died. We quickly started vaccine development then under the Obama administration. This is a study from 2005 that was published in the Emergency Infectious Disease Journal. And in this journal, in this article, they actually talk about developing a messenger RNA vaccine and a viral vector approach to a vaccine, which is both the Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson. And we did this. And what happened was COVID-19 and SARS were very similar. They both use spike proteins to gain entry into the cell. They both cause severe respiratory symptoms. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that 80% of the DNA of SARS and COVID-19 are the same. In fact, SARS is called CoV in the science community, and COVID-19 is called CoV-2. So we were able to leverage the vaccine development research from 2003 to actually develop the vaccine for this particular pandemic. If we had been hit by a pandemic that was fresh and new and something that we had never seen before, we would have been in a whole heap of trouble, okay? So the vaccine was not developed in 11 months. All right, mutations, oh my gosh. So I'm going to talk about genomic surveillance because you guys asked for these slides. You guys specifically asked for this. US and state local labs have been completely overwhelmed. We have not been doing genomic surveillance. We do not know how many mutations are where in the United States. These are the mutations. B117 is the UK. We have the South African variant. We have a Brazilian variant. We have a California variant. There's a New York variant. There's a lot of different variants, probably more than are on this slide. We don't know because we're flying blind and we have not been doing the sequencing. So what we found in the UK is that people that are affected with a variant are 64% more likely to die than others. This is the New York variant that I was telling you about that isn't on that slide. Now, this is very interesting. Troubling signs, the Pfizer and Moderna could be less effective than first thought than on a South African variant. I would not be surprised if those of us who have Pfizer and Moderna do not wind up having a booster shot. Booster shots are already being clinically tested. Now, in President Biden's COVID-19 bill, there's at least $1.75 billion for actually genetic testing. This is really, really important, genetic sequencing. And you guys wanted to know, what is this? So this is this is how we do genetic sequencing. So basically they take the DNA, right? And they actually purify it. If you actually have RNA, you actually enrich it and you actually do fragmentation, and then you actually sequence every single piece of it, right? So you know that it's made of this, and this, okay? So now what does that look like? So this is what it actually looks like. Now this is way too much, but I want people to actually realize that this is almost like a DNA fingerprinting of a virus, right? So you can actually, so this is how come we can tell, did someone who got COVID, did they get it from this event? that occurred, I don't know, let's say at the White House? Yes, because that virus has the same DNA fingerprint. And that's how come you can tell, well, this is a South African variant, this is a UK variant. And this type of fingerprinting is actually what we actually use to actually determine how many variants do we have? How prevalent are they? We don't know that right now. Then we take that variant and actually test it against the vaccine. Does the vaccine work against that variant or does it not work against that variant? Oh, so that's a lot of questions, just telling you. All right, we have distributed and administered and put in people's arms over 113 million vaccines. Israel actually developed the world's fastest vaccine rollout. I'll talk next week about what that actually entailed and what they did to actually make a difference. We have in Italy a third lockdown. I believe you're going to see this in Europe. They've actually really depended upon the AstraZeneca vaccine, which obviously flopped against the South African variant. So I don't think it's quite as efficacious. We have FEMA sites all over the country. If you can get to one, go. If you're young and you want to be vaccinated, go late and maybe there's some extra doses. Our COVID death rate fell 22% last week. That is a huge success. Important websites, Maryland website to actually vaccine locator. This is where you go, take a picture of it. This is where you go, put your name on this website to get a vaccine. If you don't think you qualify, still put your name on it. myturn.ca.gov, put your name on this website. California, actually, if you're willing to actually volunteer and actually help people with registration or administration of a vaccine, you will get the vaccine earlier just based upon volunteering and helping out. The White House decided to sell millions of vaccines to retail pharmacies, CVS and Walgreens. This is what their website looks like. CVS recently expanded the number of states that they're working in. They also partnered with Target so that they're actually giving vaccines in the dressing rooms at Target. So originally they had a low number of states they're working in, but they've since expanded. Important websites, vaccinefinder.org is a website with Boston University and the CDC. Vaccinehunter.org is actually a private one. Both of these will help you actually locate. If you're having problems finding a vaccine in your local area, I would sign up for both of these. Now, should you get vaccinated under certain medical conditions? Weakened immune system and autoimmune system, the CDC says yes after consultation with your primary care provider. Guillain-Barré and Bell syndrome, CDC says yes. Pregnant or lactating. Now, this is really important. We did not study any of these vaccines in pregnant or lactating women. What they have found is that the vaccine does not cross the placental barrier. So most OBGYNs are actually recommending it. So their recommendation for CDC is may consider it after consultation with your OBGYN. G6PD deficiency, yes, after consultation with your primary care physician. Now, I got a lot of questions about all sorts of different medical conditions. So let me tell you something. The things like diabetes, high blood pressure, those folks who are all in the clinical trials, yes, you should actually get vaccinated. If you have some sort of special tumor or some sort of special cancer or some sort of special AV malformation, you need to consult your doctor and see what he says. Just a little bit about the vaccine. For the first 2 weeks for Pfizer and Moderna, you have no increased immunization. So I don't want anybody to get the vaccine and go have a party. You got 2 weeks, you got nothing for 2 weeks, nothing, nada, okay? Then after 2 weeks, you have between 2 weeks and 21 or 28 days where you actually begin to actually get some vaccination, you get some antibodies, you get some things going. When you get ready for your second dose of your vaccine, you're probably anywhere from 65 to 75% antibodies. The second vaccination actually takes you all the way up to 95% for Pfizer and Moderna. In Israel, 97% of the deaths now are people who did not get vaccinated. This is a race. We've got to actually get moving. We got to get moving before the virus gets moving. Now, when are you fully vaccinated? You are fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your last shot. So that's really, really important. Now, what can you do when you're fully vaccinated? You can be indoors without wearing a mask and without staying 6 feet apart if you're with all the other fully vaccinated people. Now, not a party of them, like maybe 4 to 6 of them. If you visit unvaccinated people, I would recommend that you wear a mask. And if you're vaccinated and you get exposed, you don't have any symptoms, you don't have to quarantine. Now, what do you still have to do if you're vaccinated? You still have to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart from people you do not live with, and actually avoid medium or large size in-person gatherings. Get tested if you have COVID-19 symptoms and follow the guidance of the CDC for your employer or any sort of health department regarding travel requirements. These are all my people. I want to thank you for sending me photos. Keep the photos coming. I want to see these photos when y'all get vaccinated. You all are doing it. I just want to say you all are really, really doing it.